Hello, welcome to another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. My name is Chris Nelson. My site is evolvedconsciousness.org. Today is June 18th, 2025, 9 p.m. And we got another shadow work episode. Shadow work 7, is it? Shadow work 7. Great Work Launchpad episode 9. Continuing series in shadow work. Let me just get this video ninja thing set up. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. So I'll all right, I posted the link for anyone who wants to join. Everything should be good. Did I pick the wrong thing? Oh man. Hold on a second. Create a room. Yeah, I think I chose the wrong one. Hold on. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, that link was no good. This one's right. Okay. Here we go. That should be good. I can't see myself. Anyways. Let me just check the stream, make sure audio's coming through. Yeah, okay. Okay, so today's episode is brought to you by Pfizer. I'm just kidding. So we're going to talk about the need to stop dreaming. And this is related to the previous two episodes about stop lying to yourself. I went into stop lying to yourself and the general causal factors of stopping to lie to yourself. And then we went into the particulars, the effect of ending evil, that goal of ending evil, which is itself a cause itself, but it's a goal, it's an effect, something we're trying to produce. But the goal to end evil is the cause, the causal factor to how to create true freedom. And we got some people in the Chatterooskies here. I'm gonna bring them in. Eventually I'll have to get a paid subscription for StreamYard or whatever the other one's called. One or the other. Hey Brandon, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
All right. Well, not too great. I got laid off again after a year of my job, so yeah.
Oh, damn.
Today's a bit of a depressing day.
Damn, man. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that sucks.
rather than the usual, yeah, everything's fine. Well, today it's not that great. Hey Theo, how's it going?
Hey Chris, yeah, sorry to hear the bad news. Shit, what happened, man?
Life happens. AI literally took my job. That's what it is. AI took my job. You hear about it, and well, it's real.
Shit.
Yeah. Well, I'm a developer, and yeah, companies restructuring.
Oh.
Take advantage of AI, and yeah, so they don't need as many devs. So, oh well. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think that happened to my friend a few years ago as well. Yeah, it's definitely happening, especially in the software department. Yeah, it's AI is taking over big time. So, By the way, can you hear me better than before? Like I have this fancy new mic.
Seems
I
better.
finally bought one, so
I don't know if it's just my
great.
perception,
Okay.
but yeah. Your connection's green. It's not like in red in OBS there. I see the connection, so it's looking good. Are you guys seeing each other? Because I don't see the like
Yeah.
stream.
Well, but the mic itself
Yeah,
is
I
way
can see
better.
Theo, but
Anyway.
I'm not seeing like the 3-person
Yeah,
stream.
what's up with that?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
And I can barely hear Theo.
Well, I think that's normal. You can barely hear Theo all the time.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
all
that's his
right, but you
connection.
hear me well.
But I think that's your
You hear me well,
connection.
Chris.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. But I think
Yeah.
that's like
All
your
right,
connection issue is. I don't know why I can always hear you, but other people always have trouble hearing you.
Yeah.
But I think the stream hears you fine. If I go to the stream, I think the stream is always good. It's just the
Yeah.
people. Let me check. Yeah, in the stream it's fine. So it's just unfortunately the other people here. I don't know, because I think everyone is uploading, and you upload to me, and I don't know if I'm uploading to YouTube for everything that I receive, or if you guys are uploading. I don't know how it works with Video Ninja. I know
Yeah.
it uses more like bandwidth than StreamYard or other things, but
Yeah.
anyways, it's
Yeah, I
all
see
good.
like an upward triangle, and mine is red. So I assume it's uploading in with a bad bandwidth because sometimes it can be green or orange, but now it's red. So maybe that's why I'm not coming clear for Brandon. But I guess all the bandwidth is going for the stream, like it's prioritizing the stream. So that's why maybe.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, I guess there's nothing we can do about that.
Yeah. It's all good. As long as the
Oh, the
listeners can
virtual. I
hear.
forgot to turn on my virtual camera.
Oh,
That's why you guys weren't seeing shit.
there we go.
I'm
Yeah.
slacking off today.
Right.
All right. Okay, so on with the show. So we're talking about stop dreaming. Did a recap on a 5-second recap on the stop lying to yourself. And the stop dreaming, people might be asking, why is this important? If you're familiar with Pastio's work, you probably already know. But if you're not, stop dreaming is about stop fantasizing. The world is not how it is. And this is intricately linked with the stop lying to yourself. So it can get confusing when you're talking about one thing. You're like, is this stop lying to yourself? Is this stop dreaming? It can be both. And so I'll just give a recap, a distinction between the two. So to stop dreaming, first of all, you have to, like I mentioned in the stop lying to yourself, one of the points was you have to recognize that there is such a thing as truth and that there is right, there is wrong, and solipsism is false. And when you're dreaming about reality or fantasizing it's not the way it is, it's because you're believing things to be true that are false. And that can either be things that you know are false, but you want them to be true. So you're going to reject and deny truth. Or it could be that you just believe things you honestly think that they're true, but they're false. Either way, you're still going to be living in that dream world, in that fantasy world, in a false narrative of reality, a false perception of how reality is. So this is how it's dreaming. It's not dreaming when you go to sleep and things like that. No, you're not allowed to dream anymore. Everyone, stop dreaming when you go to sleep. That's not what we're talking about. And this is being blindfolded. You're walking through life sort of blindfolded where you're not actually seeing things the way they are. I think that's important in everyone's awakening process, or we call it the awakening or whatever, that we begin to recognize that the way we thought the world worked is not actually how the way the world works. And cracks start to appear. I've talked about the fear of the unknown and having a smooth path that you walk through in life in your perception of reality. And when cracks start to appear and you have holes into the abyss, into the darkness and the void, and that can bring up discomfort and fear and apprehension and anxiety and insecurity. But so you see these cracks, and rather than try to smooth them over, when we begin in this journey, we start to question things. We have doubt. We have curiosity. Like, well, this isn't making sense. Oh, look at this information here. Well, that contradicts what I've been told. Which one is true? And it can get pretty confusing when you're starting off. But again, this is like the false perception, not seeing reality as it is. You're living in a make-believe world that isn't as it is. And it's not necessarily that it could be that you don't know the truth, and then you wouldn't be lying to yourself. So to be lying to yourself, you have to be conscious of it. You have to have the information that it's been presented to you, and rather than evaluate it honestly or look into it, you reject it in favor of the lie. Or you could even accept that it's true, but choose to believe in the lie, because that's the way you're comfortable with seeing the world in that particular way. So you want to continue to see the world and perceive it in that particular way. So you choose, after hearing the truth, you're choosing to reject it, and you're going to lie to yourself that truth that was presented to you, that you thought of something maybe, you're going to reject it so you can lie to yourself to keep living in that dream reality. And I've talked about this in my earlier work in an article called Appearance versus Substance. The appearance of things versus the substance of what they actually are. And just to finish up on dream versus lying to the self, I think I wrote this clarification yesterday. To know the truth versus knowing what's false. You can dream either way and live in a false reality. So if you accept something as false and you don't have the truth, or if you accept the false reality when you have the truth because you prefer that false reality, either way it's a false reality. And you're choosing ignorance because oftentimes people are attached to that dream, to that false reality. They want it to be the truth. Passio's mentioned he came across someone, or I think it was a caller, called in and showed a guy a video of World Trade Center 7 falling, and the guy, like the caller said, the guy started to back out, like he just showed him like he just turned into a murderer or something. And the guy said, I wouldn't believe that even if it was true. So people just don't want to believe things, and they just want to believe whatever they want to believe. And that's what I realized even before I got into Passio's work. I remember it was like 2010. I realized, like, on forums, you can talk to people, you can argue, you can do a bunch of things. But in the end, the problem is, one of the problems anyways, one of the core causal problems is people just want to believe whatever they want to believe. They're not actually interested in truth or being, curious to discern it, or accepting that they might not know something and they can't draw a conclusion yet. And so people keep living in the dream when they reject that truth, and that's when you lie to yourself to keep dreaming it. Versus before, they believed in it, but they weren't lying to themselves because they didn't have access to the information. It wasn't presented to them. They didn't think of it. It was out there. They could have accessed it, but they didn't have it. They didn't come across it. So they weren't lying to themselves before, but they were still living in that illusion, accepting something as real. So I wanted to make those points starting off. To you guys, go ahead.
Hell, great points as always. The stop dreaming, aspect. That's one of the things that I've always equated with the whole, like superstitious, like her mindset, and like just believing in things, or like just blind belief in things that just like aren't true, and you refusing to believe in things that are true, and then like you building a pattern, off of these lies, and off of these untruths. But everything how you said just kind of reminded me of some of the previous videos we talked about, and how when we are attached to these these means of being in this dreamlike state, this repetitive like state, to where we don't want to learn and take in like new information, then we are still attached to some means of security, some kind of blanket or like some kind of safety net, because we refuse to, dive into the unknown and challenge those um pre pave structures within our like our thinking and and our axioms. And that's like what we are really trying to push is when we are talking about doing like just in the work, or like the whole point of challenging your whole like mental framework, and to challenge your like your whole belief structure and what you think is true, and like what you like how you view yourselves. Then that way you can start to kind of peel back those layers, and start to fix those cracks in your foundation. How, like you were saying earlier, because those cracks turn into like, if they aren't healed up, if they're not sealed up, which those cracks are of course are traumatic, or like trauma, from past earlier experiences. Then that's how like more and more things start to seep in, and those cracks get bigger and bigger over time. So when it comes to doing this kind of work, all of this are just the smaller things you know that are necessary in order to continue this this journey in this war. Because like we said earlier, if those cracks are still there, then given enough time with any crack, it can lead to something that's more negative, and then the floodgates can start to open up. So it's about that healing process. And when you stop dreaming, then you can't let the truth in and the information to flow if you're still in that bubble. You're still in that bubble of belief, and oh, because this may contradict what you think is true, then you're just going to deny it. Well, then you're saying that you are the arbiter of truth, and then it kind of gets back into like the whole solipsistic mentality, which is way more like it's way more bigger than people think it is. Like when you start getting down to those base axioms, there's a lot more solipsistic her mindset. Because like this whole well, I'm just going to dream. Well, then hell, I get to decide what's true and what's false, and then I get to decide what's right and wrong, based on my comfort bubble, like based on how secure, or how it makes me feel. Then anything outside that I deem is wrong. And like that just sounds like a emotional infant, with sadly in a physical, like body, because they don't want to take in that new information and go through that transmutation, transmutative process. So yeah, hell, you got to get out of that safety blanket. You got to get out of that safety bubble, and jump into the unknown, and start dreaming. Dreaming are in the context that we are talking about. Like, don't take it out of context. Like, yeah, some people can daydream and stuff like that, like that's fine. But once you get into that mindset where you start to take untruths and then believe that they are truths, then that's like that's where the problem is. Because then you start to become attached to those, and then you don't want to let go. And then it becomes that whole ego attachment that we've hit upon, and Chris has talked about so many times.
Yeah, and so great points. And I want to ask Chris, how would what would you say is the difference between stopping to lying to yourself and stopping to dream, or stop dreaming?
Well, that's what I went through at the beginning, was that there's one is within the other. So when you're dreaming, then the illusion, the fantasy, so that's reality not as it is. The perception is not aligned with the reality. Your map is not congruent with the territory. However limited your map is, the map is way off. Like in your map, there's a bunch of mountains, but in the reality it's actually a river, but in your map you got a bunch of mountains, so your map doesn't match the territory. So that can happen because you're just ignorant and you're not looking at the right places. You just think, oh, these are mountains or something. Anyways, my analogy starts to break there. It's just a poor analogy, but so the stop dreaming is the so that we're establishing what the stop dreaming is. That the dream is the fantasy, the illusion, the thing that isn't actually the way reality is. So that's your map. Your perception is faulty, and that can be, as I was mentioning at the beginning, that can be because you're lying to yourself, or it could be because you're not lying to yourself because you don't know what the truth is. But when you're presented with the truth, then you have to evaluate it honestly and look into that. And if you don't, well, that's where you're going to get into the lying. Is like, okay, well, you got presented that information. All right. Did you look into it? Maybe not. So if they didn't, they just rejected it. They didn't even look into it. And that's because of their affinity, their attachment towards that narrative they believe in, their perception of reality, the way they currently see things, and they're comfortable with that, and they don't want the discomfort of losing that and seeing it, especially when they view it more in a positive light, and the information that's being brought shows reality as more negative. There's more darkness, there's more evil or immorality. People don't want to, a lot of people don't want to face that. Certainly when it has to do with themselves, but even when it's completely void of any personal identification, directly personal identification, because even if it's not directly personal to them, they are still identified with their worldview. That self-view is tied to the worldview. So even though you're not making it about them, because they associate their own perception of themselves and their position in the world, when you're attacking or degrading or denigrating, making that external perception more negative, it's going to automatically reflect and bubble into their own self-view and how they view themselves in relation to the world, in relation to reality. So even then it brings up those ego defenses, even though it's not directly associated with the ego, like telling someone they're doing something wrong themselves. And so that's where the lying fits into the stop dreaming. Stop lying to yourself is when you have it, when it's presented, and then you rejected it. Or, maybe there's even this double think where you're somehow accepting in cognitive dissonance two things at the same time, and then you're just choosing to pick one. You're like, okay, that's true, but well, I'm gonna prefer the other one, like the guy with the Pt.7. He's like, even if it's true, I'm still gonna believe that it's not true.
It's safer. Yeah, it's safer. Because that's what we've all been kind of trained to do. Like go with that whole, safe, safe way of conditioning. It's comforting too. So it's that security blanket, because to change that, belief would require force. Time. It would require knowledge, sacrifice. Like
responsibility.
Right. Yeah. Like like who wants to spend the time to do all that? Like, so yeah. You gotta be a crazy fool to want to, help make that sacrifice.
What? You do your own research? You're a madman.
Yeah, I know. You gotta read books. Oh man, no. You gotta read. You gotta read stuff online. You're crazy.
Yeah.
Online, man. Fuck. There's just conspiracies. Don't look online.
You got to read past the memes, just there's more than a paragraph to learn about these things. Holy smokes. But what's up, gentlemen? Yeah, keep on dreaming, people. And it kind of reminds me of a couple of things. Yeah, Brandon, that security blanket with the belief systems and people's, false hoods of perception and all that stuff. I did a video on this, like a little short reel, I think, and it was tied into that video we did with the One Great Work Warriors on religion and all this stuff, like beliefs of religion and stuff. And like people have all these security blankets. And I kind of had this analogy of, Peanuts with Linus with his blanket and all this stuff. And like, he can't live without it and all this stuff, even though it stinks a little bit and all that stuff. It's probably, all that stuff. And like, but he doesn't see it that way. Everyone else knows what it's about, but you know what I mean? So yeah, it's like, you were saying, Chris, with the two attached to these falsehoods, and like the ego attachment is so strong, it people feel like they're really suffering hardcore when they're detached from that, and that's when these excuse me, those automatic self-defense systems kick in, like earlier today, like literally, like when you were talking, I was just laughing to myself thinking, like, this person took it so seriously and personal because she was trying to, like, she had the right intentions. She was trying to, like, set up this, cafe, bar, restaurant that we have, and we have like a musical thing going on, and so she wanted to like make it all nice and neat. Yet, she put laid out a bunch of stock for preparation of things that we don't even use or sell, and it just takes up a bunch of space that is so fucking limited. It's ridiculous. And I just like made a couple like observational things and asking questions, like in a Socratic type of way, not critical. And she just like, oh, like, why you got to give me all these reflections and criticisms and all this stuff? I was like, I just asked you a question or two, like, yeah, and you haven't even responded. Like, what's up? Like, you haven't even worked the night shifts with us, so you don't know what's going on. You don't know what things are sold the most, and so I thought we were gonna do this together. You could have waited like 30 minutes for me to come through, and like, but she just like, oh no, like fuck, like I've been here since 9 o'clock in the morning. This and that, like, quit dreaming, like, like we're all in the same boat, we're all doing the same thing together. While I'm speaking, God, anyone listening, think of other analogies of any kind of workplace or collaboration or networking, where we have to all be on the same page to a good degree and have organized and accountability and all these things. People cannot be fucking dreaming and off on their own stuff on some solipsistic type of business when we're all in it together, and it doesn't fucking work that way, right? And we got another video coming up with the One Great Work Warriors coming up, and it's titled Hopium, and this is kind of like along the lines of what this is about, of just these people are so delusional, right? And they just gotta snap out of it, like, because yeah, we can all have wonderful dreams and be the dreamers of dreams and the makers of music and all that stuff in context of that type of vibe. But as far as like what you're getting at, Chris, with this title, I think yeah. Yeah, good points, everyone.
Yeah, that person, I think their major issue was they were being told that they did something wrong and they don't want to hear it. And that's part of what we talked about in the stop lying to yourself, which is obviously tied to the stop dreaming. They're very intricately linked. And yeah, so they did something they shouldn't have done, and it's useless. And then you're asking them, well, how long you been working here? Like, do you think it's useful to have these things that aren't being sold? Shouldn't we have things that are being sold instead? And like, automatically, like, oh well, clearly I did it wrong, and you're telling me I did it wrong when I don't want to hear that. So I'm gonna go. Why are you bringing me down, man? Telling me things that are true. Like, just let me live in my fantasy and let me try to sell all this garbage rather than put stuff that's worth selling. So yeah, living in their own world, not really looking at the variables and the factors for the task at hand. Did you want to say something else, Theo?
Yeah. So I was kind of thinking like, because it sounds very similar, stop lying to yourself, stop dreaming. So I'm kind of trying to make it more distinct in my own mind. And I kind of feel like almost stop dreaming should be prior to stop lying to yourself, because the way I understand it so far is stopping to dream is kind of like stop being in the unconscious, in the fake reality, in the matrix, in the trauma, even you could say, in just whatever thing that is keeping you from being truly conscious. And I think you first need to burst those bubbles, like Brandon mentioned, and then you can actually understand that you might be lying to yourself, and then you understand that you need to stop lying to yourself about things. So yeah, I don't know if there's a specific order to those things, but I kind of feel about it that way. And there was one more thing. Well, I'll leave it there for now.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right that like categorically, as I mentioned before, like the dreaming is the overarching one, and then within the dreaming, like if you look at me and my flow charts, you'd have the dreaming first, and then you'd flow chart, and lying to yourself or not lying to yourself. Either way, you're accepting a false representation of reality in your dreaming at the top. So yeah, it would be like apparent. So it would be first. I was just going in the order that Passio laid them out. So first was stop lying and then stop dreaming. So that's the way I did it. And then as we've gone through that and I've analyzed it more, like, yeah, one is like the parent, and then it branches off into either you are lying to yourself and you're still believing in the bullshit, or you're just believing in bullshit because, well, you've been conditioned to believe in it and you haven't had the truth presented to be able to correct that belief in bullshit. Another thing here for the correction side of this is you got to be open to unknowns, as we talked about the cracks and the void, and I've talked about that before. This fear and this apprehension, anxiety, discomfort, insecurity of these cracks in the foundation, these holes, this abyss, this darkness, the void of how your map looks when someone punches a hole through it and say, okay, this is wrong, punch a hole through it. Well, you can either accept that now you have a hole in your map and what you thought was there isn't there, or you can be like, well, screw you. I still want that to be there. And I'm going to put it back. I'm going to tape it back there, and here's my map fixed again. But that's not the right way. So you got to be open to these unknowns, not fear them or have anxiety and insecurity and that security blanket. You got to get rid of that blanket. You're not 5-6 years old with your little blanket anymore. Get rid of that security blanket. And so when the new information is presented, it was in my my cognitive dissonance chart from like 2 episodes ago. I was in there on the positive side, where it's to not automatically reject or accept things, right? In the trivium process, this is the right brain aspect of reception, receiving the information, and you can't just immediately engage in too much right brain, which is just automatically accept everything coming in and just be a gullible fool. And you can't engage in that imbalanced left brain aspect of criticism or skepticism and automatically reject it. So you have to be open to things, and okay, and there's the information, and you don't know if it's true, and then you go from there, and you'll maybe never know it's true. So we got to know and accept. So this is to lead us to know and accept the real condition. So especially when we were talking about last week, stop lying to yourself about ending slavery, ending evil, ending immorality, doing the great work, and what's effective in doing the great work. So you have to know and accept that real condition of slavery, because this is the goal. We're talking about the great work, the true great work of ending our enslavement. So these unknowns of, presenting information, people come across information about the government or the police and how this is actually creating forms of our enslavement collectively as a society, as a group of people in an area. We have to accept that real condition, that it is enslavement. So that dream world of thinking like, freedom, yeah, we're so free, yeah, 4th of July. You guys Americans, it's 4th of July. So anyways, we don't have that in the rest of the world because we were never as free. We never fought for our freedom the way you guys did. So you guys have a fortunate history, but people still in that dream, that belief, that superstition, that religion, the most dangerous superstition of government, like Larkin Rose has his book. And so living in that fantasy of, the land of the free. Well, it might be the land of the more free, but it's not the land of the free. It's not true freedom. So it might be more free than other places, but it's not the free. So that's the reality that people have trouble accepting. They're just conditioned, they're brainwashed, they're mind controlled, and that's the fantasy dream world that they live in, that they've been conditioned by. And they could come across the information, and how willing are they to learn about it, to know some information, and maybe accept that, well, they don't know if it's true or not, and then eventually could look into it and to discover that real condition of reality and what it actually is. And to be open to the unknowns is also so to know and accept the real condition, which is slavery, and the real requirements to change that condition, which is the sacrifice towards the great work, which is what this is all about. The learning and the teaching, the input and the output in that trivium process. And yeah, I'll stop it for there. You guys wanna say stuff about it or other stuff?
Uh, I think I'm the only one here who's living in the States, which
Oh
is
yeah, that's
crazy.
true.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, that's like how that's crazy. And well, it just shows, like how the benefits, like, of this technology, because like we're all for from, like how different parts. But yeah, um, Mark talked about one of the primal fears, and he talked about, like man's fear of chaos. And I always looked at that, and then he talked about fear of the unknown, man's fear of change. Kind of see that kind of all going hand in hand, because it is a legitimate fear. Because if something is unknown to you, then it's going to be a fear until you have that knowledge. And that's the whole point of you know the whole feminine essence is jumping into that unknown and making that giant leap, with the act of care. Because that's where, change is going to happen, growth. Yeah, it could be some danger, it could be some, some unsettling, feelings, but it is what it is. And like that's the courage that's also, have required. So, you know, this fear of the unknown is, of course, one of the main things that we're all talking about, because it's all tied together. Just like I was talking about earlier, fear to hell, security, fear of safety, because that's what's known, and anything outside that is going to bring up those fight or flight, challenging her beliefs, shattering worldviews, and that's what the individual doesn't want to have to go through. Um, so this fear of chaos has to be let go. It has to be also understood, because chaos in and of itself isn't a bad thing. You know, it has this, like this kind of negative connotation. You know, oh, it'll be chaos if it was such and such. But like Mark has always said, chaos can be a great teacher. That's one of the ways for us to learn. It has always been one of the greatest teachers throughout history. Sadly, unfortunately, it doesn't have to be that way, but it is in that experience through chaos, then that's where a greater means of learning comes, because it usually comes from a means of suffering, or like a greater, deeper scar. So in that fear of the unknown, that fear of chaos, it's a more like deeper understanding, because it's a teaching of like what you should not do, in a sense, you know learning through that negative, so you can learn for a positive means of growth, and transmutate that negative into the positive by not doing that negative means of behavior, hell again, because you understand the consequences that will come hell along with that. So I'll save it for right there.
Yeah, word to Mayat. And yeah, as I've said, shit, I might have said this in one of these chats with y'all, in regards to like just being more comfortable out, like outside of your comfort zones, and like just getting more used to just like, hey, there's a lot of things that are unknown, unforeseen. We just have to be ready and prepared. Are you mentally equipped and composed properly to just, take it on full on and just deal with it? Organize the chaos. That's kind of, in a sense, working your magic, right? Just making things that are not organized in a more sound, structural way or whatever. And there's so many things that I could relay as far as like what I do at work, like all the time. It's insane. But yeah, with the whole like writing some things down in regards to like, hey, like stop dreaming, y'all. Like seriously, like stop living so fucking pretentious. Stop fantasizing on your 5D rides to wherever you think you're going, as if there's 60 and you're gonna bypass 40 magically, whatever the hell. I don't get it sometimes. Like actually, all the time with a lot of people, because they don't even have anything to fucking say back to me, and it's unfortunate because you can see right then and there that they're just dreaming of some kind of new age things that are just going to happen, and what they don't have to work for it, they don't have to earn it, you know what I mean? So I'm sure people are doing their whatever, a kundalini yoga breath work sometimes, and whatever, but still it's like, do you think that's going to usher in freedom for the whole planet Gaia and all the entities that live upon it? Do you understand the requirements that are needed for all that stuff? The magnitude of efforts and aggregate numbers, as Chris has been saying, video in, video out. We need the fucking numbers and all this thing. So yeah, like, but wow, go on TikTok or anywhere else. The influencers and YouTubers, they're in droves with all this lip servicing and spiritual fashion statements. Yet they couldn't tell you what a lot of them couldn't tell you what an actual fucking right is, and how to actually obtain true freedom and actually live as a sovereign being, even if we're in the grips of slavery and all these things, right? So yeah, I try to keep myself in check as well, and tell myself like, hey, like, are you dreaming over there? Are you thinking about some things that are just not true? Are you putting yourself into this light of where it's not really the case and all this stuff? And yeah, sometimes if you put out so much work and this and that, and you're thinking like, yeah, maybe I'm making a difference in this and that, and then you get the reality checks of just like, I remember my ex-wife, after doing like 8 years of making videos and talking to her about all these things on the side and this and that, she still didn't, think geoengineering was the thing, And so for me, that was also like, salt on the wound of being heartbroken during the breakup and all this stuff. And it's like, what kind of impact can we really have? Hey, Derek, stop dreaming. Just, like, don't rest on your laurels. That's kind of like some of the words that are in the back of my mind when thinking about like, hey, don't be pretentious. Don't act like you've, accomplished a whole lot. I still feel like, and it's like, I don't feel that way. It's like just things that keep me in check and keep that funny little ego stuff in check as well, because I still feel like I'm at the beginning. Like I'm starting a new series and I'm loving it. Conversations with women, conversations with musicians and all this stuff. I want to get into the thick of things with a lot of stuff, and like I've done so much, like a decade's worth of putting out 130 mixes of music, and that's great. And I feel like it's had its place in space and influence to a degree, and this and that. I want to focus on other stuff, and so that's me kind of telling y'all that like I'm not dreaming and thinking like, oh, I'm just like really cool DJ that's done all this stuff and been around for 10 years, like big fucking deal. There's like DJ Premier's been around for like fucking 40. So big up respects to the giants that we, have been influenced and, stand upon and honor them like properly. So yeah, I'm not dreaming on all that stuff, so much respects to those that I've learned from and all that jazz, and those who I've collaborated with as well, right? Like y'all, much love.
Yeah, you just got something horribly wrong, though.
Yeah.
It's not the 6D ascension, man. It's the Earth split ascension, right? We're gonna split. We're not gonna ascend to another dimension. we're going to split into two Earths. There's the real deal here. You're getting the real 411 on the higher learning when we're talking about the Earth split. Obviously I'm shitting you. Obviously they're both maybe they're true, but I think it's bullshit anyways. But that's just my belief. Honestly, it's a belief that I think it's bullshit. All this ascension stuff or Earth splitting and rapture nonsense. But what Brandon talked about was my next point here, the chaos. Yeah, that's the important. I was going to mention that syntropy and the will. The last thing I had talked about was the sacrifice needed to do the great work. That employs the syntropic aspect, to counter the chaos aspect and entropy. Well, it takes syntropy and will to do that work, to bring order, to get rid of that entropy, that chaos. And that entropy and chaos, as Brandon was mentioning, it's a good learning tool if you're going to pay attention to it. If you're just going to ignore it, then it's not a learning tool. And there could be more and more chaos brought about, but if you're not going to pay attention to it and try to identify the root causal factor for why it is there, then you're not going to be empowered by it. Whatever is creating the chaos, which could be from yourself, it will most likely continue because it's not being targeted from that root causal factor, which means it will never be eliminated by someone who desires to eliminate it. Maybe someone, whatever example, someone doesn't clean the room. Well, someone can come in and clean the room for them, so they don't have to identify anything. Things will get ordered because someone else is bringing in that syntropy. So they're never going to get to the root causal factor. But in the society, we're all contributing to it through our ignorance. That we're not trying to create the order by applying the will to do that work, that syntropic force, to counter that entropy, the chaos of those dark magicians and dark sorcerers who are shaping and molding everyone in like clay into what we have in society is we're all universal constructs, and to be placed as cogs in a machine where you go through school and then you're just, someone can be removed from a position and you just put someone else in. You take people out, you put someone in. That's how it works in corporate jobs and everything, and that's how society is. And we're all replaceable to the whole machine because we're just cogs in that machine to make it work, and that machine is the machine of our enslavement as we're currently living it. That's the machine we all work towards and perpetuate in our society. Even if it isn't directly towards that, we have indirect means, as I mentioned in other places in this series related to my morality presentation. And so I think if anyone wants to talk about the syntropic aspect and the chaos aspect, these are important things for people to think about when we're talking about the solutions, right? We kicked into the solutions, being open to unknowns and looking at that chaos and the dreaming and the fantasizing and that false perception that can lead to that creation of chaos, that emergence of chaos in the world, and then you have to pay attention to it. And if you're just going to see it as government is order and the police is order and everything's order, well, you're not actually seeing the chaos. So that's where whether you're lying to yourself or you haven't come across the information, you're not seeing reality accurately. And then once you're actually presented with it, then you can choose to correct your map or not and keep living in that delusion, but that root causal factor will never be addressed and things will keep going on as they are.
Yeah, that's the insidious part, is because when you understand, like what you're saying, that, people can't even acknowledge the entropy, that's taking place, that chaotic, force, because they're, stuck in that dreamlike state, that bubble-like state. So when that chaotic force, happens in their life, they don't know how to correctly discern it for what it is, because there is a disconnect, of course, with them and reality. So because they're in that dreamlike state, they'll never ever, first be able to acknowledge it correctly, and then two, even take in that correct knowledge to even go about to create the conditions to create change. Because in that dreamlike state, you're not going to take in any form of new information that's going to contradict or like make you even start. So it's like that's what the whole Matrix movie was is you're in this dreamlike state, and you have to go through a certain process in order to get out of that state. But that process was a very extreme difficult process that most people didn't want to go through. But it is in that like that dream, you know it's like how Morpheus said, it's like anybody who's in that dream is still the enemy, sadly, because it's the way they think. It's their belief structure, it's their worldviews, it's that conditioning, it's that programming. Because someone who was in that dreamlike state will never ever create the conditions to get out of it, because they'll never ever in their mindset even allow that fundamental grammar gathering of information to take place. And what Derek talked about earlier, there's something that I had written down, is to kind of keep challenging ourselves, like in another sense, when it comes to doing this craft, always be willing to try something new, and be willing to kind of mix things up, and like just kind of not stay like doing the same shit like over and over. Like you kind of got to be willing to like upgrade, like learn something new, you know kind of be willing to change things up and kind of like mix stuff in. That's something that I try to incorporate, like every few months. I try to learn something new that I can incorporate, so that way you don't get bored out, because like this is literally like a craft, you know. Yeah, I don't really consider this content anymore. Like now I'm starting to understand what Derek was saying. It goes much deeper than that. Like it's actually craft, because there's a lot of love, have respect and dedication that goes into this. And like anybody can just create content, but it takes a lot of more of a care and love and sacrifice to truly do this, because it goes beyond and just creating content. Like it's actual love for truth, and a love for like humanity, freedom, and just not wanting to be enslaved, and not wanting to see others enslaved.
All right, am I coming in clear? Because the video became a little bit choppy for me. All right, cool. All right, yeah. Very, very good points from all of you. Yeah, one thing came to mind when also Derek was speaking, also now Brandon, you mentioned it. It's kind of about being humble. So to burst those bubbles, that takes courage. But once you get beyond that and overcoming fears, and once you're beyond that and you see the world for what it is, you need to really be humble in order to not want to jump back into the matrix, right? You need to be really humble. You cannot want that burger, like in the movie The Matrix, with this guy that ended up betraying the shit, right?
Cypher, yeah.
Because he wanted to taste. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, that's what happened, right? He wanted to have another steak or something.
What a mistake, right?
uh,
Yeah, he doesn't want the
yeah.
substance of reality. He
So
wants the appearance. He wants
yeah.
to go
Stakes
back
are
to the
So
high.
world of
you have
appearances.
yeah. Go
Sorry.
ahead, Derek. Yeah. No problem. All right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good analogy, right? For like you know I mean, it's kind of silly, just for a steak, he betrayed everything. But,
Well, it wasn't the steak. He
like,
wants the dream. It's perfect for this episode because what he wanted. He wanted the make believe world of the dream. He wanted to go back to the dream because he didn't like reality. It's perfect. Thanks, Theo, for bringing that up. That's the perfect one for this episode. Yeah.
all right, cool.
Yeah.
All right, you all can
Roll.
jump in. Yeah, I know you're fired up.
No, Theo,
He was
you were
making
on
a
a roll.
joke. You didn't get the
I was
joke?
saying,
Say it
roll with
again.
that.
Say it again.
Yeah.
Say the joke again.
Oh, me? Oh, like the stakes are high or low wherever they
No.
go, where Cypher might
No,
be.
you were saying
Falling.
it was a mistake.
Yeah.
That's all Derek was saying. He was just
Yeah.
interrupting to make a joke about it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Right.
shit!
Yeah.
You didn't hear that?
You go ahead. You go ahead. Yeah, I know you got something to say. So
Oh yeah. Sorry, but no. That honestly, that was a great analogy with the cipher thing. I thought you had more to say about it, but if you want to come back to it or whatever. But yeah, basically, like if we're in this like dream state, isn't that pretty passive, right? And what's the I mean, I showed up like 10 minutes late or whatever. I don't know if you guys mentioned the whole George Carlin bit that's quite classic of, like, and that's the American dream because, you got to be asleep to blah, 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 right? That kind of stuff. So, yeah, there's the, the actual like dreaming, like having that deep thought, imagination, manifestation to be that generative action that's activated towards that life force work and intention behind it and wanting to do right. And like, yeah, we can talk about practical dreams, but obviously we're talking about the more delusional dreams and people just kind of being stuck on that and operating from there, not from practical means and based in reality and not lying to themselves, as we mentioned in the last 2 weeks and all that stuff, right? So yeah, I kind of see it as this whole like kind of like daydreaming away life in a sense. It's like lying to yourself is like a Coke, and the daydreaming stuff is like a Coke, a Diet Coke or something like that. It seems, if that makes sense, But yeah, so yeah, people are going to be easily falling into like savior programming and that kind of stuff, even thinking like they're going to be the savior of themselves without holding themselves accountable, and like you guys mentioned, like having proper responsibility and that kind of stuff. So are you kidding me? No, just yeah. Theo, back to you because I cut you off. I don't know if you had anything else to say or tack on to that,
yeah.
but or Chris, yeah, sorry.
All right, cool. Yeah. I recollected myself after that whole
Gavin.
cipher thing. It's got myself a bit deciphered here there or something, or the opposite of that, ciphered up. Never mind. Let's decipher things. All right. Yeah. So what I was trying to say with that is, yeah, like you have to really be humble to not want that stake so much that you want to go back to the matrix, right? You have to be humble enough to, yeah. Like you mentioned, Brandon and Derek, like challenge, like the man in the mirror, right? Like like challenge yourself and not put yourself on some kind of pedestal that you deserve everything in the world and like that you're some kind of a great man because you did this or that, like you mentioned, Derek, and like we're all doing great things and this is the great work, and we're gonna have the very highs and sometimes we're gonna have some lows as well, but it's not to be attached emotionally to anything. It's to just understand that this is your life path, this is your life work, and you know, just because you have some kind of fireworks and whatever popping in and out while you're on your way to that destination, that destiny, whatever, of at least trying to achieve true freedom in this realm. It's not to be caught up in anything. It's not to be sidetracked. It's to remain on that path and be faithful to that path all the way to the end. So you have this very delicious steak popping up on your path. You're not gonna go to it because it's a trap, right? Like that. That's not. Just stop dreaming. It's like don't dream that. Oh, maybe if I just have this one steak one time, I'm really hungry now. It's gonna be okay. Like it's not. It's not gonna change anything. It's like you never know. You know. especially once you understand where that steak come from, and in regards to veganism and all that stuff, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So actually, it's a good example in terms of that as well. It's like, don't betray your morals, right? Like, and I know it's very difficult. I know all of us betray our morals in minor ways, especially when it comes to food and stuff like that, like many times. So it's not gonna be perfect. That's another thing. Is to stop dreaming that, like, even if you're already doing the great work and you understand all those things, some people get caught up in the fantasy of perfection. They think everything has to be perfect, and I have to sound perfect, and my webcam needs to look perfect, and my points need to be very good. And if that's the kind of bar you set yourself all the time, you're not gonna really do the great work at all. You're gonna, excuse me, you're gonna hold yourself back from actually doing the work. So yeah, that's another point, right, guys? I mean, yeah, I think that can happen to some people. So the other, yeah, end up falling back to shadow ego stuff, as we see happen, or they fall to perfectionism or having expectations, emotional attachments to things. And yeah, you have to get rid of those things. You have to stop lying to yourself that it's okay to have any of those things for whatever reason. It's not. The only thing that you need to focus on is just doing the work to the best of your ability and staying humble about all of it. Like, you are your own greatest enemy, and you are also your own greatest friend. So just, have that internal alchemy, creating great potions for yourself and all of us to drink.
Yeah, well said. Reminds me of the caricature of the little devil and the little angel on the shoulder. One's the aspect of you that's your greatest enemy, and one is like your friend. Look at it that way. And about that perfection, there were 2 points related to that, but one that I remember right now is Passio says it in his How to Be the True Media, is perfection is the enemy of good. And what that means is that if you're trying to be perfect and you won't do things until you get them perfect, as you mentioned, Theo, then you're just holding yourself back, because you're not going to be perfect. It's not like, and you can't just wait for, I'm going to wait. I'm going to start, but I'm going to start when my life is like in perfect order, and when I got my life set up and everything's good, then I'm going to start. Well, that's never going to happen, because there is no perfect order in your life, and you're just, again, lying to yourself so that you don't have to start, so that you don't take on that responsibility. And these are the stories, these are the narratives, the dreams people tell themselves, so that they don't do that sacrifice. They don't take on the burden and the responsibility and put in the time and the attention and the effort and dedication and persistence to do it. Because it's not like, yeah, I'm going to do this once. I'm going to do a little video or a little audio here, a little article, and that was a lot of work. I'm done. All right, thanks, guys. That's it for me. That's the persistence and the dedication. You gotta keep at it, and that's what, if you. I think Passio's talked about it when he's had his like seminars for natural law. I think he had one at the Anarchadelphia thing, and showing people what the great work is and what it involves, and people are like, "Whoa, I had no idea this is what it takes," and then a lot of them, like, they want to teach, but they don't know how to teach, because they don't know how to create content. And that's what brought him to create the How to Be the True Media, because what a lot of people lacked was the technical skills. So if anyone, you want to teach, or you don't know how, you know what a right is, you know what morality is, you know what evil is, you know what slavery is, you got the definitions, but you're not putting out the content. Maybe it's that you just don't know how to do the content. And I think that was the other point I wanted to mention related to what Theo was talking about. what we're in, or maybe it was Derek that mentioned it before, related to quantity. I'm getting confused in the things that I wanted to remember to talk about. I didn't write them down today. So that quantity aspect is, that's what we're in. We're in a content creation war. Is you have to create the content, because that's how we're going to influence people. It's not by talking to someone in the grocery store or wherever you go. Not that you shouldn't do that. You can do that. But that's not where the change is going to happen. That's not how the change is going to happen. The change is going to happen by affecting people's mind state that will then reverberate into a change in behavior. So that's where things need to be targeted, and that content creation. I forget who mentioned it. Might have been Brandon. Sorry, guys, I'm a little spazzed today. And it's not just about creating any content, but it's about creating the right kind of content. So we can talk about, oh, did you look at Trump did this? Oh, look at Prince Charles, and oh, look at the WEF, and we're going to talk about all the people doing all the kinds of evil, and like, okay, there can be a utility in that, as we've talked about, that lower level of the great work and the effects and the particulars, the people in the events. But what the great work actually isn't the people in the events, or people doing things all the time, and you're just going to criticize other people or talk about what this person did. Like, okay, there might be a use for that, but that's not what's going to change things. That's not at all what's going to change things. You can talk about individuals until the cows come home, or whatever that saying is. That's not going to change anything. None of that. Everyone, there could be 100 million people talking about all the individuals or all the events going on. Is that going to change anything? Wrong. Buzzer. That's the bullshit. Bullshit buzzer, like Passio had a few years ago. But that's bullshit. That's not what's going to change it. So if you're going to do the great work, you got to be targeting things from that philosophical substance level that's going to affect the mind state of changing people's worldview. This, the dream, to get them to stop wanting to live in their dream world, in their fantasy, and want to live in their reality by accepting what reality is. And the last point I have here is related to this, is the Dunning-Kruger effect. So Passio talked a lot about it in 2024. He repeated it 9 times in the episodes, went into rants on his last season there. But the Dunning-Kruger effect is something I've known about for a while, and it's stated generally in the scientific community as people who know more underestimate how much they know, and people who know less overestimate how much they know. And Passio didn't really talk about it in that sense. I don't think he ever stated it that way, but that's how I learned about it, and that's how it's generally talked about. So people who know a lot can tend to doubt themselves, and people who don't know much are way too confident in their beliefs, in their dream reality, in their fantasies, in their false perceptions. So they believe things. They believe they know things when they don't actually know. And this gets into epistemology, which will be the next part we're going to get into. It's learning how to think in the next episode. That's what I have here on my itinerary, my curriculum for the school of the great work here. And they assume things are true. That's what we're talking about, to know something is true. Not to know it as a body of knowledge, but to know it as truth. They assume and they believe that the things that they know as information is knowing it as truth. And then they go around making claims of truth. So they hear something and the Greys and the Zeta Reticuli Greys, and then we got the Draconians, and then we got the Blue Avians, and we got all this stuff, and everything they hear. Wow, did you see this post about the flat earth? Oh, fucking those round earthers, those globe earthers, they're such retards, Clearly there's this meme here, this picture. It just proves things so well. Blah, vomit puppet. You know, that's what I'm thinking right now. I was talking like the fucking vomit puppet.
Oh, the vomit puppet, man!
Yeah.
I miss the vomit puppet.
Yeah.
I miss him.
So yeah, people need this proper epistemological framework. There was a guy last week. The first person I banned. They're blocked from ever commenting on the channel. They could watch, but they were called Dunning Team Kruger effect or something. And they were just talking bullshit. And when I had enough was when they said, "Bo, you guys are just parroting Passio. You're just repeating Passio. You suck. You're so unoriginal," or something like that. And that's when I had enough of them. Because like, what are you so fucking retarded? Like their name perfectly described them. They were such a moron. They were the epitome of the Dunning-Kruger, going around pretending as if they knew what the fucking Dunning-Kruger effect is, and they were on the positive side. When they were in the negative side, it's like this unbelievable like idiocracy moment. I don't know what to describe it, but it's like this person was so
he's on the
retarded.
peak of Mount Stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there you go. Someone in the chat, Dunning Team Kruger Force. That person is dumb. Okay? So the statement they were saying is, we were repeating Passio. So like basically we suck and we should find original content. So basically the argument is, if anyone says something in an audio or video or writes about it in a book, well, there's no point in talking about it because, well, you're just unoriginal and you suck because you're just repeating what someone else says. No, the whole fucking thing is repetition. We all got to be broken records. Talked about this at the beginning of the series, I think. Or in my Law of Freedom, I forget where it was, but I mentioned this before, that the whole point of this is to be broken records, is we got to repeat the same things over and over, because that's the whole thing of there's nothing new under the sun, is it's the same information that has to be repeated to amplify the voice of that truth, that particular truth, the quality truths. They need to be repeated so that they can be amplified, because there's the forces of deception who are not talking about this, and they're propagating the conditioning and the false reality. They want people to stay in that dream and that fantasy. And we got to combat that. But they have a loud voice because they're on the airwaves, they're on the internet, it's all over the place. So those who have the quality truths are trying to get people to construct a more accurate perception of reality. Well, that's representative of the symbolism of the voice of truth. And the voice is very weak. It's very small. And these are things that are going to need to be repeated by an individual like myself, and repeated by many individuals. So one individual can talk about it and they can keep talking about it, and then other individuals can also repeat the same information, and that is what is necessary. So this Dunning-Kruger moron was an actual Dunning-Kruger moron. And they thought that they were so damn smart, and that's why I just banned them, because I was like, what is the point of even explaining this, which I'm doing here? I'm ranting about it, but at that point I was like, I'm not even going to bother with this person. They're just so damn retarded. Like, get the hell out of here. You're just a waste of space. Anyways.
Brain damage. Yeah. Yeah,
Since
like brain damage. Yeah. People, literally have brain damage, and it's sad. Yeah, like those kind of people, you just gotta just move along, sadly.
Yeah, they just don't get it at all. Like, that's the whole point, is to repeat the quality truths. That's the solution.
And anybody, who claims to know about this stuff, if you don't get it, we understand. We are saying the same thing Marx is saying, because that's the truth that needs to be understood. It's not about repeating anyone. It's about speaking the truth. So if someone is saying something that's true, and like you're not, copying a person, you're just stating what's true. And that's what's important. So if you don't freaking get it, then that's, oh man, yeah, brain damaged, I mean, hell, he's still in a freaking dream, yeah. He's still lying to himself, They
don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They think they get it. That's the Dunning-Kruger. The ignorant have overconfidence in the knowledge that they don't have, and the falsity they believe, and they think it's true.
Yep. So everyone thinks that they're on the side of right. Everyone thinks they are smarter than they are, and they're not. They're not.
That's why I call it the dumbing Kruger effect. Because why are things getting dumbed down even more? And people, with the TikTokification of things, as I like to call it, of, like, oh, instant gratification of the information. And all of a sudden, I have like this higher knowledge sensation when, nah, you ain't done the integration, So have some patience, the fuck. So, Chris, you're talking about like going back to doing the great work is to be moving minds and hearts towards objective morality and natural law and all these things that are required to embody to usher in the proper sovereign society, if you will. uh and yeah, part of it is combating this mega media miasma of 24/7 nonstop, fuckery that is pulling the heartstrings of all these people. So how can we, pull their direction and heartstrings towards what's beating more towards, that good old natty law and whatever, right? Eternal principles that, if people are operating on those, you're good to go. You're not going to be suffering as much and all this stuff. You're not going to be living on the plane of effects as much as, being the more of the cause point of, proper results in your life. You're reaping what you sow, and you're actually, sowing the seeds consciously in real time and all that stuff. So yeah, snap out of it again and learn how to garden and stuff, with those seeds, I guess, metaphorically speaking, obviously. So yeah, Theo, how are those roosters doing
Yeah.
over there, by the way?
Yeah, they're going crazy. Yeah, metaphysical gardening. I like that. Very good stuff. Yeah, make sure you have those beautiful flowers and delicious fruits coming in. Yeah, otherwise you're just bringing those. I don't know. You're only bringing the dung for the fertilizer, but you're not growing anything. You're just making shit stink when you're in that Dunning-Kruger effect. And yeah, I kind of think about like yeah, like what Saticus says. I think that's a big one. It's like if you think you know, you still don't know. So that's a big thing for people to consider when it comes to dreaming, lying to yourself, being in the Dunning-Kruger effect. Is you have to be humble all the time. You cannot think you know just because you heard some information that clicked for you or something. And I know, sometimes it can be like a big deal. Like I've been there, right? Of course, we all been there. We all been on that Mount Stupid at one point or another. So, yeah, people who got past it, all we can do is, show you the way down back to reality from that Mount Stupid to the plane of, yeah, literally reality of the way things are. And in regards to that, like one thing that came to mind also with the Matrix is like, so like, because Chris mentioned that in because we have people have to really have desire and care and love for the truth, for the reality. And I think one thing in the Matrix that I don't like is the reality in the Matrix is it's all like what they are in space and there are evil aliens and all that stuff, and um it's the reality doesn't feel like it's worth to live for. So no wonder like Cypher just wants to go back to the Matrix and eat steaks all day. Because who wants to be stuck in space with alien battleships and all that stuff? But I feel like the true reality of the world, once you understand natural law and you understand that actually we can dream for an incredibly beautiful world, right? So to stop to dream, not to dream for positive things. We want why we are doing this is because we are dreaming for that beautiful positive world that is based in natty law, and people are treating each other as they would like to be treated, even in regards to animals and all living beings. And in general. So, yeah, once you understand that, that's the true reality is natural law. That's why it's called natural law. That's the way things are supposed to be. But I guess also part of natural law is the law of rhythm and the pendulum swings, and you have to face the fact that we have swinged way too far to the dark side, to that chaos that you mentioned. That it's not necessarily negative. There's in nature, in God's reality, there's nothing that is really negative or evil. It's kind of evil to understand that there is something wrong and not to do anything about it. That's the evil thing, right? So yeah, what we are actually here trying to do something about it, and we're doing the best we can, whether it's to repeat information or to sound like other people. Who gives a fuck? Are you speaking the truth or are you just shitting on people? That's what people need to consider.
Yeah. By the way, they're not in space and there's no aliens, Theo, in the Matrix movie.
Machina muerte, rather.
All right. So that's all I got for tonight. If anyone wants to say anything else, I'm out of juice. If anyone's got more juice, juice it up.
Let it loose. I cut you out, Brandon. Go for it.
I think the new dream food is cake. I think that's what everybody's eating. And then the new dream, they went from steak to cake. Like everyone's talking about how eating cake these days. So that's the new dream food. I'm sure Derek he'll get that. But yeah, it's still about knowing the objective difference of right and wrong. Again, the essential theme, because we can be talking about raising R vibrations and all this stuff. Well, how do you do that with right moral action and teaching people about objective morality? That's the best way to raise your vibration. It ain't about going out there and buying crystals and getting organized. Not saying that's a bad idea, but if you really want to truly create some change, then it starts with the moral, philosophical, epistemological understanding and teaching that to others. So going to keep, bringing it back to that, because that's the one piece of knowledge that man just seems to keep running away from. And even the individuals, who claim to know what's going on, like when you just bring up, morality, consciousness, true freedom, like government and slavery, they're gone. They are gone like the cops are chasing them. So,
But make sure to buy lots of crystals first, then do the great work. And
yeah.
you're really going to do it well.
Oh man.
Then, get you a pack of smokes of that good old hopium premium blend, right? Anyways.
Sounds good.
Yeah, for real. Like, let's try to, what do you actually dream about? What do you take away from the dreams after you wake up from a good night's sleep or a bad night's sleep or whatever, right? Like, what do you think is going on in the background? Those are more the questions to be answered. And hey, who are you exactly? Who am I? Like look at yourself in the mirror from that, and dissolve away those facades that are kind of holding you back from your true authentic self, I guess, right? And that could be a launch pad for you to really activate that proper creative side that might have been lurking in the background due to that cloudy dreaminess going on in there. If that makes sense. But yeah, Chris, thanks again so much. Always a pleasure to be around. Theo, Brandon as well. Much love, everyone. Respects.
Thanks for coming by, guys. Thanks for anyone viewing. And yeah, thanks for the participation and putting your perspective and knowledge out there for people to gain value from. And yeah, next time will be, like I mentioned, I think it's Pascal's third point, learn how to think. So continuing with that outline of the 5 steps to initiation, since that's what this, starting from part 2 of the Great Work Launchpad, the series was originally called Barriers to Initiation, Face the Mirror, Shadow Work, and then I just shortened it to Shadow Work. So the barriers to initiation. So continuing in that theme of one of the barriers is not knowing how to think, and that directly ties into stop dreaming and stop lying to yourself. It's intricately and intimately linked to that. So catch everyone next week, I guess, and have a good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are, good afternoon.